thank you very much for having me. It was my first introduction to Creative Mornings when Nicole contacted me, so it was an exciting opportunity. It's just serendipitous that May is Historic Preservation Month. And then when the topic was brought up and my background in coming to Lake Worth is related to historic preservation, I was design manager for the Cultural Council's headquarters renovation and the beach casino reconstruction. And that's how I ended up in Lake Worth. And so in talking to Nicole, we came up with an idea about preservation of place. And I think that will touch on the hearts of many of you. If you've followed the paper probably for the past 10 years, Lake Worth then, and now Lake Worth Beach, has had some tumultuous history in the sense of, is it going to survive? How is it financially? We've struggled with a degradation of our infrastructure, poor management, the list goes on and on and on. And so I arrived in the city 8.5 years ago. I've been the director 8 years as of last week, and created the Community Sustainability Department to be a one-stop shop to preserve and enhance and ensure the long-term sustainability of the city of Lake Worth Beach, both from a fiscal, cultural, history, and economical standpoint. And we also focus on some ecology. So this is just a little overview to give you some idea of where we are in the world. Lake Worth Beach is uniquely located at the center of Palm Beach County, in between some of the most wealthy communities in the country. We have 5 waterfronts. The beach is now in our name. We have the beach. We have 2 sides of the intercoastal. We have the C-51 Canal at the north, the Keller Canal to the west, and Lake Osborne series on the west side. So there are very few communities that have that number of water resources, the unique location, and a very interesting history. Some overviews of our location. And just so we clarify, the city of Lake Worth Beach kind of ends just west of 95 at the canal. We don't go all the way to Wellington. We don't go all the way past Lantana. And that's been some of the confusion. We are a very intact urban grid that was created in 1912. We celebrated our 100th anniversary back in 2012. Here's some postcards of what Lake Worth was. The Gulf Stream Hotels on the your upper right. The Cultural Council buildings in the lower left, our original band shell. Some more views. Lake Worth has had some trouble with in nature. We have had 4 hurricanes that did very serious damage to the city. For whatever reason, it appears it knocks off 1 or 2 floors off buildings. Those buildings tend to stay, and we redo them. The casino building is one that's been rebuilt as of 2011, but it also lost its top 3 times. Here's our urban form that was laid out. There was a Palm Beach development company, Lake Worth Development Company, that laid out the city in this urban format. And you may be familiar with our cottages and the 25-foot lots. People would buy a farm, and they would be given a lot in Lake Worth to build like a little guest quarters or a place to stay. And people could buy increments of 25-foot lots, and that's kind of where that came from. But prior to that, the city was settled by a woman named Fannie Mae, who was the postmistress. She was an African-American woman, very progressive for her time. She created the town of Jewell, which I think is a really cool name. And then that evolved into the town of Lucerne. And then they had to change the name again because Lucerne had already been taken by another community in Florida. So Lake Worth came about in 1912. And here are some images of some of the public infrastructure location buildings, the library, the City Hall, Annex, which is just down here, which originally was a school. The hurricane blew its top off, we redid it and made it City Hall. Lake Worth is also very lucky to have a unique variety of architecture. It is probably the largest concentration of Art Deco inspired streamlined modern architecture in Palm Beach County. We do Karen Koskoff, that's not her first name. Ms. Koskoff wrote a book, Sharon, gives a tour of Art Deco architecture in the city most every year, and it has been celebrated and recognized in South Florida as being intact, and it's also a representative in our 6 local historic districts. Some more images of our architecture. The Art Deco Association did inspire the new Publix, which opened in 2011. We also are very proud of our pedestrian scale in that we have 2 main streets, Lake Avenue and Lucerne Avenue. What some also don't know is that both of those roads are owned by the Florida Department of Transportation, which does limit us in some fashions on what we can do with the roads. We are in the process of trying to take those over, but as you can tell in the picture on the lower left, we do have the largest street painting festival in the world. It happens in February, and over 100,000 people come to visit the city as artists practice their craft on the streets in chalk. The Playhouse also is the longest running community playhouse in the state. Oh, what did I just do? Anyway, I'm sorry I'm not as lively as all of you. I drink a little bit of coffee, but coffee really works well for you all. You need to come spend every morning in Lake Worth and get us all cheery and going. Here's some examples of our pedestrian scale. Hopefully you all have spent some time here on the weekend. It's a warm neighborhood city. People welcome you. It's really friendly. I think that's what draws people here. I see there's a couple of residents of the city here. And that's what we try to celebrate is you can have a hometown feel in Lake Worth. You're not overwhelmed. It isn't like South Beach. It isn't Key West. It's Lake Worth. And the mayor, Pam Triolo, does often say that we are the best version of ourselves. We are a combination of a place between Soho, Greenwich Village, and Key West. Our public spaces, it was well planned. The City Hall, like I've mentioned, the annex at our Cultural Arts Plaza, the Bryant Park with the amphitheater. Lake Worth is also celebrated for its cultural diversity. We have the largest Mayan Guatemalan population, I think, in Palm Beach County. We have a very large Haitian American population. As some of you may know, Compass is located here, which is the largest social center for gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, questioning, and somebody else group. And then we also have a lot of really active retirees and people who've been here forever, which we call the pioneer families. Some of those were born here probably in the 30s and are still here. So it makes an interesting collection and dynamic. We celebrate most of those ethnicities through various festivals throughout the year. One of the images I'll get to in a minute, but I'll just recognize that. We had Canvas come last year, and they did the mural of Martin Luther King on the back of the Cultural Council. And I'll go into some of that, what's happening in our association, which what I think many of you are interested in, the more creative aspect of Lake Worth. Our growing collection of murals, which was inspired by Canvas. That was our first exploration into really formal, international recognized artists putting drawings and images on the city buildings and actually private buildings. And that was November 3 years ago. And that evolved into a weekend which we'll celebrate right before Art Basel called Focus. And I'll mention a little bit about that in a little bit. The city also was very lucky to have, it was given to us, the original freight depot of the FEC tracks. It's over on South 2nd Avenue, just west of railroad tracks. And then we, in turn, leased that to the Mid-Zeiton Art Center, which is led by Joanne Burkow. And they have glass-blowing textiles, and we'll have the largest foundry in the Southeast United States very soon in a historic building. That's their gallery in the middle picture. They have some awesome classes. Something else the community has celebrated that's both creative and artistic and educational was Little Free Libraries. We have the largest Little Free Library program in the state. All the little libraries are decorated by local artists. We received a national award for that. We're very happy the Cultural Council is located here. So we do see ourselves as the artistic center of the county. Special events. I've mentioned the Street Painting Festival. We also have the raft race coming up. All of our neighborhood associations, most of them, build a handmade raft. It gets really crazy. Everybody gets up in costumes. Very few of the rafts make it through the race. That's not the point. The commissioners often like to win, but they don't always happen. But it's a really family-friendly event, and it's really homegrown. I think Lake Worth, and I've lived in West Palm Beach, Flamingo Park, off and on for almost 30 years. And even though it's lovely there, we don't all know our neighbors. In Lake Worth, everybody knows everybody. And if somebody gets in trouble, they come out and help you. And it's so edifying. And being from the South, I haven't seen that in any community in Florida where everybody does work together. We have our differences at city commission meetings, as any place would, but when the times get tough, they do unite and come together, which I think is really awesome. Some more images of our special events that are happening in the city. Lake Worth also has an uncommercialized waterfront. if you have never noticed, there's not a single commercial entity on the water, the entire frontage of the city. It's a good thing as well as a bad thing. It's sort of held back downtown from developing. It's been an issue with restoring the Gulfstream Hotel, that most of the water access is limited to either a kayak or a very small boat. We're going to work and try to balance that a little bit better. But most of the waterfront in the city is either public space, Lake Worth Golf Course, Bryant Park, Pioneer Park, Bryant Park South. We collaborated with the county to put in the systems of Snook Islands, which help clean the water. Because Lake Worth's located where it is, it's halfway between the Boynton Beach and the Palm Beach Inlet. So for a long time, a lot of nasty stuff collected in front of Lake Worth. I forgot how many years ago, we used to have a mayor that was a lifeguard and used to swim across the intercoastal, and he got really sick. This is probably 15 years ago, maybe. And now you can actually see the bottom of the water, so we're getting there. I love the rainbow picture. I guess God was shining his light on Lake Worth that day. And our cottages. This was an initiative by the citizens of Lake Worth to create a cottage book celebrating. We have about 500 or more little cottages that are celebrated for their unique architecture. They aren't necessarily designed by an architect. They were built by craftspeople or people building it themselves. They're colorful. We have a tour every year. That book is available at the library as well as the Welcome Center at City Hall Annex. It's an aspect that I think has united a number of the neighborhoods, and it's celebrated in the city. Thankfully, the historic districts were designated about 20 years ago, so a lot of these did not get torn down. And now that the economy is improving, people are spending a lot of money bringing these back. And most of them are anywhere from 900 to 1,300 square feet, so they're not really overly large. We have 3 bed and breakfasts in the city, Mangoes, Hazel Palm, and we have another one opening. There is an entity I want you to watch out for that is coming from New Orleans. It's going to build a bed and breakfast as well as a extended stay hotel on North O, which will soon be called North Ocean Breeze. We won't go there. We have people who don't like living on No, and the people who bought the property love the fact that they were from New Orleans and their property was on North O. And now it's going to change. That's kind of interesting. But they are a preservation group, and they're preserving an old boarding house as the extended stay and then building a little hotel next door. And that was in a historic district, and it's a really unique project. David Miller is the architect out of West Palm Beach, and we're excited to see that start very soon. And when it comes to future of place, this is kind of how I ended up here. The city was in a tragic state. We were in an economic state of emergency. There had been no significant private investment in the city in almost a decade. The recession hit us really bad. We had almost 3,000 properties that were abandoned, foreclosed, or just left. And so we embarked on a way to market the endless possibilities of Lake Worth, because no one really spent much time celebrating Lake Worth, except for those who are outside Lake Worth. We have a way of sort of beating ourselves up here a lot. And so we worked to create a series of items that preserve, encourage, stimulate, and embrace. The citizens do participate heavily in the city, and we do appreciate that. We wanted to build a brighter economy, bring jobs, have it be economically sustainable for the long term. We have adopted a number of sustainable practices. We did a carbon footprint report in 2011. I'll get to another really exciting thing that some of you who are more engineered-based might be interested in. And then we've always tried to preserve our unique historic character and neighborhood pattern, because that's what we sell. We feel that Lake Worth is an ideal place to live, grow, learn, play, and that's our primary economic driver is people. So to do that, we adopted a new comprehensive plan that has a future land use element which dictates how land use patterns will evolve. There's a zoning code, this might be kind of boring to some of you, that has a sustainable bonus incentive program that if you incorporate sustainable aspects, providing public space, public amenities, do a LEED certification or Green Globes designation, you can get higher density, intensity, and height. We also made it very apparent that our regulating message was clear, concise, consistent, collaborative, and predictable. Developers and investors don't like to waste time. They want to know what they can do. So we actually have the fastest approval process for an entitlement program in the state, which is 60 days. We have had several projects or people who own property asked to be annexed in from the county get their land use, their zoning, and their entitlement, which would be faster than going through the county to get something. So that proved to us that we at least were on the right track in making it easy to invest money in the city. For the creatives, we also have just finished our historic preservation guideline book. There's a second piece of that that's an educational item that explains the importance of preservation and how you implement it. And there will be a rack card made for each one of the 6 historic districts. That's available now. We're finishing up the major thoroughfare guidelines book by Keith and Schnars. That should be out later this summer, and that regulates the major thoroughfares in the city, which are Lake and Lucerne, 10th Avenue North, 6th Avenue South, Federal Highway, Dixie Highway, and Lake Worth Road. What was an accomplishment back in June, we did a comprehensive plan change and incorporated the Arts and Cultural Master Plan. That was a collaborative effort of the Cultural Council of Lake Worth, the CRA, and the city. It lays out a format for a cultural arts district, which is mostly downtown and then along Dixie Highway to the railroad tracks going south to 6th Avenue. And it really focuses on how can we embrace the cultural arts in their broadest context to provide a stable future for the city. It embraces live work, creative aspects of the entrepreneurial class, new housing, tourism. It would be available online, and those of you who like the web and you might want to leave here and go visit Lake Worth's website, we got filed a lawsuit that our website wasn't ADA compliant, so we had to take it down. So we are building it back, and it should be back up in a much more abbreviated format June 1st. If there are things that I've mentioned that you would like to see or have access to, then I can get them to you in one way or another, either through a Dropbox or a file. But we will hopefully have our website back up in a new version very soon, and those who are impaired in one way or the other can appreciate it and utilize it like everybody else can. In June, we also, realizing that we were lagging in investment in the city, created a mechanism to get additional height, intensity, and density through 3 different programs. One was our Sustainable Bonus Incentive Program that allows various increases from 25% to 100% in density and height, depending on where you are in the city. Most of this is encouraged west of Dixie Highway, where it's less historic and less of an impact. We just adopted a transfer development rights program where we can transfer development rights from the city's historic properties to a private developer, and then that money is geared toward infrastructure improvements in the city only. And so if we need to restore the City Hall Annex or the City Hall Auditorium, hopefully it will be a revenue stream to help with that. There's a potential of generating over the next 20 years anywhere from $10 to $14 million, which is about the same amount that the half-penny sales tax is generating for the city. We created a very different approach to economic investment incentives. We have 3 or 4 enterprise funds. We own our own electric utility, which some of you may be aware of, water, sewer, and stormwater. We put together an incentive package where we give back to a developer a portion of the new revenue stream that will come for the first 3 years once their project is actually open. No other city in Florida does this. There's some that do them in the West Coast, but that has already been taken advantage of twice and has led to a new, hopefully you're looking out for it. It's a project I'll show a picture of in a minute. The mid here, between 16th and 17th Avenue North on Dixie Highway, they will be breaking ground next month. It has some live work space on the first floor or co-op commercial space, 230 one-bedroom and two-bedroom units. It's being designed by the Glidden Spina firm and developed by Affiliated. Hopefully it will be finished sometime mid-2020. So look for that, and as new residents, you can come and move in and live in a new apartment on Dixie Highway and help us turn it around. Examples of some other projects that have happened, the Urban Arts Lofts, which you are aware of, Lucente, which is behind the post office, was done by Kennedy Homes. La Jolla is an affordable housing project done by the CRA and Renaissance program over on 6th Avenue South, and then a couple other images of projects that are on the way on 10th Avenue North. This is Urban Arts Loft. Phase 2 is the upper right, and then we're really happy with the one, which is a condo downtown, which had just been finished on Palmway. They're getting ready to do Phase 2, which is a much more contemporary Miami version of the building on Palmway and Lake Avenue, and that will also be 12 condos. And then on the lower left, someone renovated an old appliance building and did that to it, and it's now the home of a window company, as well as our first medical marijuana pharmacy, which we have 2. and I guess we sort of kicked that off for Palm Beach County. Our third annual Historic Preservation Awards is coming up on May 31st. There will be a little presentation and awards program on the, at the Bookseller, which is a building that won an award last year. We give an award to those entities or people or artisans who do a really good job preserving their property in the historic district. So that is and just really cool. It brings the neighborhood together. And Envision Lake Worth. Envision Lake Worth was a creative aspect of our focus weekend last year in November. What we did is opened up a design competition, provided various sites in the city as inspiration, and asked people in the creative world, give us your ideas of what you would put on that property based on our code. And we had a design competition. We had some students involved from the University of Miami. 7 practitioners in Palm Beach County responded, and it was actually quite successful, and some of the ideas were very interesting. One of those is actually going to lead to a real project. Focus also is the celebration of the cultural arts in downtown Lake Worth. It's a collaboration among the CRA, the city, and the Cultural Council. We will have some additional murals being placed. There'll be some presentations. We focus on children. It's usually a preceding Art Basel. We may be trying to wiggle the actual date, but watch out for that, because it was at the gallery opening at Hatch, which is the location where Cultural Council, the CRA was really quite extraordinary. And the Cultural Council had music presentations, a cocktail hour, they had a couple speakers, and their children's program was very well attended. So we're hoping to build that into a branded event, not on the same par as the Street Painting Festival, but we'd like to at some point have at least 3 big culturally based events during the season. So that will be in November, then we have February, then probably around April. So if you have ideas for that event, you're invited to help us out. So that's Lake Worth. If I can answer questions on areas that I did not get into, I will. One thing I'll get to, one thing that is not in here and it's not really preserved, but in a way it is. We have built an association with the Southeast Marine Renewable Energy Resource Center of FAU. And it's called CIMRAC. And what that is basically, we are collaborating on an international level to develop the machinery or generators to generate electricity from the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is as close to the United States anywhere just off our beach. We have our own electric utility. We're working with a consortium to help developers, engineers, or inventors that have these, I'll call them contraptions because they're all different kinds. There's propellers and turbines and whatever. Come plop them out on the ocean 15 miles offshore and see how well they'll work. And then we will be the conduit to bring that electricity. There's enough potential there to almost run half the state of Florida, if you think about it, in the Gulf Stream every second. We could easily be one of the first cities in the world that would be totally carbon neutral on a totally renewable energy platform and also have energy to sell to the open market. That is our goal in the next 15 or 20 years. So if you know people who have some money who want to take a venture in an emerging enterprise or industry that's never happened before, we're here. That's us.